All right, so this is video 5, and this is taking a look at schizophrenia. So, what is schizophrenia? Schizophrenia consists of a group of severe disorders characterized by disorganized and disillusional thinking, disturbed perceptions, and inappropriate emotions. So, those three things. Essentially, an individual loses a sense of reality. This is a disorder people are referring to when they use the term they have madness, psychosis, and insanity. So let's talk about the prevalence of and some stats on schizophrenia. The diagnosis of an individual with schizophrenia usually takes place in maturing adults. Nearly 1 out of 100 people will develop schizophrenia in their lifetime. 24 million people suffer with schizophrenia worldwide, and it is a disorder that is found all around the world. It's the most heavily researched disorder. For men, schizophrenia usually shows up between the ages of 25 and between the ages of 25 to 40 for women. Usually, like I said, it is one is diagnosed when they are a maturing adult. It impacts males and females the same amount, and men are often diagnosed earlier and have some more severe cases. And sometimes it often develops out of stress or a transition in one's life and develops gradually. So in the DSM, again, this is a part you don't have to know, but there are different types of schizophrenia, again, then with different levels of severity and then different stressors that could be added on. So you got delusional, brief psychotic, schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, catatonic, medically induced schizophrenia. The general symptoms of one with schizophrenia, but remember it changes from each of the different disorders, is 2 or more of the following symptoms occur for a 1 month period. At least one of them must be either the first 1, 2, or 3. So we'll talk about this more in class, but they have issues of delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech, or socially withdrawn. So they need to have 2 of those symptoms, but one of them must be 1, 2, or 3 here, or A, B, or C. The individual's life is impacted and their behavior is dysfunctional, so that must be occurring. These continue to persist for over a 6-month period, so this is occurring now for 6 months, not due to a substance disorder, and they have no history of autism. So there are different negative and positive symptoms with schizophrenia. So positive and negative do not refer to a symptom's benefit or their lack of, but rather the nature of how it affected a person with schizophrenia. So positive symptoms are added to their behavior, added to their consciousness. So over here in blue, we have a lot of positive behaviors that could be added to them. They have hallucinations and delusions. They have auditory hallucinations, disorganized speech. So things that are added to them, added to one's behavior. The negative then is they're taken away from an individual's behavior. So you have obviously a depressed mood. You have neurocognitive defects, memory loss. You have a loss of speech, a loss of interest or drive, etc. So again, here's the positive symptoms. Positive symptoms are psychotic behaviors not generally seen in healthy people. People with positive symptoms may lose a touch with some aspects of reality, and it's an added behavior. You may get hallucinations, delusions, and your thoughts. You may impact your dysfunctional thinking. So what are delusions? Delusions are false beliefs, often persecution or grandeur that may accompany psychotic disorder. You may have paranoid tendencies. So this cat thinks that maybe it's a lion. You think something and it's a false belief, false sense of identity. Another positive hallucination, something that's added to an individual, is hallucinations, auditory or visual. It could also be a tactile. You think a stimulus is there, but there is no sensory stimulation. So you may hear voices, you may hear auditory things that aren't necessarily there. You also could have disorganized thought. Disorganized thought breaks down your selective attention. You can't focus on one thing at a time. This could create something called word salad. And word salad is when your language takes a strange turn, and when you're speaking, you have jumbled formulated sentences because you can't have one stream of thought. Negative symptoms, remember, are associated with disruption to normal emotion or behavior. You lack behaviors. Symptoms could include the flat effect, which you show no emotional response, or your voice or your tone is pretty much flat. Reduced feelings of pleasure in everyday life, difficulty being and sustaining in activities, and your reduced speaking. So what are the causes of schizophrenia? Again, you're usually diagnosed in early adulthood. It was originally thought that it was because of defective parenting or repressed trauma, but now a lot of science is showing that there is a biological change. What the exact cause of the disorder still remains somewhat a mystery. There is strong evidence that there is a genetic link. Biologically, we're going to talk about this in class, but there is a loss of gray matter. MRI scans were created after repeatedly scanning 12 schizophrenic subjects over 5 years, and they compared 12 healthy control brains, and they found that there was a difference in the gray matter and the loss of gray matter. So the earliest defective over 5 years later, you could see that there's a severe loss in gray matter indicated by the red and pink colors. So the red and pink colors over time, they begin to depreciate in one's brain. You also have an excess amount of dopamine. Dopamine creates hallucinations, and it's very similar to that of having a ton of cocaine or meth in your body. It also, you see that there's a low function in your frontal lobe, which helps with reasoning and thinking. There's also a shrinkage in your cortex and a shrinkage in your thalamus, which helps with your understanding selective attention and helps with your different sensory experiences being filtered in. So that's what also can create those hallucinations. There is a genetic link to schizophrenia. People who have identical twins who suffer from schizophrenia have a 50% chance of suffering from the disorder too, even if they were raised in separate environments. Similarly, a child with one parent suffering from schizophrenia has a 13% chance developing the disorder, but a child whose two parents have the disorder have a 46% chance of developing schizophrenia. So that's the overview of schizophrenia. I will see you in class.